A retired rescue dog suddenly starts barking at a toy chest during a quiet Sunday visit. What seemed like a normal day quickly unravels into a chilling discovery that exposes a hidden camera. It's a dangerous predator, and a little girl silent. Cries for help. What if the only one who heard the truth had 4 legs and a bark that could shake the dark? If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up. Tell us in the comments where you're watching. We love hearing from you. Now let's jump into the story. Nova had barked at many strange things in her 9 years: a leaking gas line, a lost hiker, even a squirrel trapped in a drain pipe. But the noise that split the quiet Sunday afternoon inside Lana Wood's living room felt different. It was raw, half siren, half thunder, and it made the framed photos on the mantel tremble. Dorian, Nova's former search and rescue partner and Lana's brother, was pouring coffee when the first bark stabbed the air. The mug slipped, splashing hot liquid. He did not swear. Every lesson from years of fieldwork shouted in his head. Trust the dog. She never lies. Ruby, 6, and busy building a block castle, jolted upright. Her plastic crown rolled under the sofa. She covered her ears and stared at Nova. This was not the playful bark she loved. It sounded like an alarm from deep underground. Lana hurried in, wiping wet hands on a towel. "What's going on?" she asked, voice unsteady. Nova stood rigid. Before an old cedar toy trunk, her tail pointed straight back, fur bristling like wire. Mitch Galloway, Lana's boyfriend, followed with his phone raised. "Maybe a mouse," he joked, but Nova snapped another warning bark, and he backed away. Dorian knelt beside the dog. Hand hovered above her collar, feeling muscles ready to spring. "Easy, girl," he whispered. Nova's answer was a low growl that buzzed against his fingers. In her amber eyes he saw no fear, only certainty. Ruby peeked from behind a chair. "Is the toy box bad?" she asked. Dorian forced a smile. Toys can't be bad, but they can hide surprises. His own words chilled him. Very slowly he lifted. The lid hinges squealed.
How?
Inside lay dolls, dinosaurs, bead necklaces, and a worn plush elephant. Everything looked harmless, smelled of dust and fabric. Still, Nova growled. Dorian squeezed the elephant and felt something hard. A hidden seam popped open, revealing a tiny lens blinking red. Lana gasped. Mitch lowered his phone. Ruby hugged. Her knees, Dorian's stomach turned cold. "Someone put a camera in your kid's toy," he said, trying to keep his voice flat. He sealed the elephant in a freezer bag. Nova stayed locked on the trunk, nose twitching. Dorian tapped the wooden floor hollow in one spot, but found nothing else. Yet Nova would not relax. "We're locking the house," he told Lana. She nodded, pale. Mitch muttered about leaving, but Nova bared her teeth and he stayed. Dorian fetched a signal reader from his truck. The screen glowed with a steady green. Bar live transmission. Someone was watching. He set up a laptop on the dining table. Ruby drew shaky hearts beside him. Nova paced between them in the hallway. Outside, wind rattled the chimes. Each creak made Ruby flinch. Lana called police. Dispatch promised a patrol car soon. Dorian doubted soon would be soon enough. Dusk settled. Nova barked once more at the dark hallway. He saw nothing, but he trusted her. He placed a hand on Ruby's shoulder and another on Nova's back. "Whatever this is," he said, keeping his voice calm, "we face it together." Nova's growl eased into a low hum, an engine waiting for the signal. The bark had shattered Sunday calm. But it had also drawn a clear line. Danger had come looking for a child, and a loyal dog had answered first. Dorian's mind flashed back to a winter night in the mountains 4 years earlier. Nova had barked the same way outside a collapsed cabin. Rescuers at first dismissed her, calling it an echo off the rocks, but Dorian followed. They found a family alive in an air pocket beneath the snow. Since that night, he had promised never to ignore her voice. He moved room to room with the reader, Nova at his heel. Ruby trailed behind, clutching her stuffed rabbit. In the hallway closet, the meter flickered yellow but calmed when Dorian unplugged the Wi-Fi router. He wondered how long the camera had been there. How many nights a stranger had watched his niece sleep, Lana sank onto the sofa, face in her hands. "How could this happen?" she whispered. No one answered. Dorian tasted anger like iron. The house had seemed safe when he arrived that morning with fresh bagels and plans for board games. Now, every shadow felt like an intruder. 20 minutes. Later, red-blue lights washed across the windows. Officer Tessa Graham knocked, entered, and listened to Dorian's short report. She photographed the toy, logged evidence, and radioed for a detective. "Seal the doors," she said. "If someone planted that device, they may come back for it." Nova settled at Ruby's feet. The girl finally let go of her rabbit and stroked the dog's ears. "Thank you for hearing me," she said in a small, tired voice. Nova closed her eyes, but her ears stayed high, still guarding the silence. Night wrapped Lana's house in a hush so deep that even the old fridge stopped humming, as if it too were holding its breath. Dorian sat in the hallway chair outside. Ruby's bedroom, one boot planted, one knee up, rifle propped across his lap. The hallway light was dim, but Nova's eyes caught it like amber coals. She lay across the doorway, head on pause, ears twitching at every tick and distant car engine. The clock hit to 11 a.m. and Nova rose without a sound. Nose high, following a smell only she knew. Dorian followed her into the living room, where moonlight painted pale stripes across the rug. Nova pressed her snout against the wall just above the baseboard, exactly where the toy chest had stood earlier. Her neck stiffened, and a low, steady growl rolled out. Dorian slid his multi-tool from his pocket and removed the outlet cover. Behind the wires sat a small black box, the size of a chewing gum pack. Its green light blinking like a cautious eye. He eased the box into a plastic evidence bag, but the reader clipped to his belt told the bigger story. The signal meter pulsed. Strong. Someone somewhere was still tuned in. Nova huffed and turned her head toward the kitchen. Footsteps creaked. Mitch stood there, rubbing his eyes, phone loose in his hand. "Can't sleep," he mumbled. When Nova snarled, the phone slipped a little. Dorian noticed the bracelet on Mitch's wrist. Brown leather with 3 brass studs, morning carried the taste of day-old coffee and worry. Lena Torres, a forensic tech from the county lab, arrived with a silver laptop and a carton of energy drinks. She hooked the transmitter to her cables, fingers moving fast. Ruby peeked from behind the couch, hugging Nova like a life vest. Lena's screen flickered and filled with frozen video frames, short clips of Ruby's room, time-stamped in red. In one frame, a man's arm adjusted a toy on the dresser. The bracelet was clear as noon sun. Lana's hand flew to her mouth. Mitch tried to laugh it off. "Guys, I sell stuff online. I get gadgets all the time." Nova cut him off with a bark so sharp it felt like shattered glass. Officer Tessa Graham reappeared, this time with 2 patrolmen. Mitch's smile cracked. Handcuffs clicked. As they let him out, Ruby whispered, "Is Nova angry?" Dorian shook his head. "She's telling us she sees the truth." With Mitch gone, the house felt wider, but no safer. The afternoon slid into evening, each minute slower than the last. Clouds piled over the hills, and a restless wind rattled the maple branches. Nova paced from door to door, claws tapping on hardwood. Dorian installed motion lights, reset the router password, and shoved a heavy dresser in front of the back patio door. He wanted steel bars and floodlights, but tonight plywood courage would do. At 11:38 p.m., Nova lunged at the back door, teeth bared. Dorian sprang up, heart pounding. Outside, the new floodlight flared, catching the silhouette of a tall figure. Near the fence, the stranger froze, hooed up, then bolted. Dorian flung the door open, Nova streaking ahead like a rocket. Wet grass whipped under his boots, cold air burning his lungs. But the figure leapt the fence and vanished into the maze of backyards. Detective Isaac Ramos arrived just before dawn, crooked eyes red. He watched the security footage twice, then turned to Dorian. "Mitch didn't act alone," he said. "The IP trail ends at an encrypted relay in Nevada. That relay belongs to Garrett Shaw." The name felt like a slap. Shaw was a repeat offender, known for hiding in online shadows. Ramos rubbed his temples. "Shaw's involved? The camera." In the toy is only the front door. There may be dozens of doors. Dorian's phone buzzed with a text from Lena. Found more metadata live feed routed through 3 countries. Definitely organized. Dorian pocketed the phone, mind racing. Ow. Nova brushed her head against his knee, as if reminding him to breathe. Ruby sat at the kitchen table, drawing with bright crayons. She held up a picture for Dorian, a black dog wearing a cape, standing on a roof, barking at a dark cloud. Nova turns bad signals into good ones, she said. Dorian fought tears and nodded. Lana hovered in the doorway, face pale. I let Mitch into our lives, she said, voice small. Dorian answered softly. The blame stays on the guilty. Right now Ruby needs you strong, not sorry. Lana bit her lip and reached to stroke Nova's fur. Nova allowed it, but her gaze stayed on the window, watching for the next shadow. Evening settled once more. Dorian checked doors, windows, attic hatch, then spread a sleeping bag in the hallway. Ruby slept in her room. Nova curled at her side. At 1:07 a.m. Nova stood, muscles coiled, and stared at the ceiling. Dorian heard nothing, saw nothing, yet trusted the warning. He dialed Ramos, whispering they're probing again. The detective promised a mobile unit within minutes. Lights flashed outside. Nova, satisfied, lay down at last. Dorian stroked her head. We'll end this, he said. Lena's earlier report resurfaced in his mind. Shaw owned a derelict farmhouse. 60 miles away, wired to the same relay. That farmhouse was a magnet, pulling Dorian forward. Shaw thought he could hide behind screens, but a dog's bark had already cracked his shell. Soon Dorian vowed they would peel it away completely. Sunrise crept over the hills, turning the world pink and gold. Ruby padded into the hall, hair tangled. She knelt beside Nova. Did the bad man come back? Dorian shook his head. Not tonight. Ruby kissed Nova's nose. Then Nova scared him again. Dorian smiled, though fatigue tugged at his bones. Ah! He looked out the window toward the distant road. One more night, he whispered. Then we bring the fight to him. Nova's tail thumped once, a simple promise written in fur and faith. The signals in the night still pulsed, but each bark, each chase, new piece of evidence pushed the enemy into narrower corners. Dorian believed that corners were dangerous places, because that was where heroes like Nova liked to strike. Dawn broke thin and gray as 3 unmarked trucks rolled along the country road. Inside the first truck, Dorian sat in the back seat, gear strapped tight, Nova's head resting on his knee. Her ears stayed high, reading the wind that slipped through a half-open window. Detective Ramos drove, drinking bitter coffee. Nobody spoke much. The farmhouse ahead was more than a building, it was the source of the signal that had haunted their nights. The place came into view just after a curve, paint peeling, barn sagging, weeds tall as shoulders. It looked abandoned, but a thin cable ran from the roof to a satellite dish, proof that someone inside still talked to the world. Dorian's stomach nodded. Shaw's here, Ramos whispered, mostly to himself. He killed the engine. The other 2 trucks fanned out, officers crouching, low behind doors, rifles ready. Nova wind once, eager. Dorian clipped the old search vest onto Nova. The fabric was faded, but the patch trust the dog still showed. He unclipped her leash, gave the hand signal. Nova crept forward, belly low, nose twitching. She paused at the porch steps, then swung left toward a side window broken near the latch. Dorian followed, boots silent on damp leaves. Heart pounding loud enough he worried Shaw could hear it. The side door gave after one soft kick. Inside, dust hung in lazy stripes of light. Nova's nails clicked on warped boards as she moved. Pausing at each open room, in a back hallway, a dull hum grew louder, like countless bees behind a wall. Nova angled toward a door with fresh screws. Dorian raised 2 fingers. Officer O'Neill shouldered forward and cracked the lock with a pry. Bar. The door swung wide. Computer monitors lined the walls, glowing blue in the half-dark. Each screen showed a different child's bedroom, date stamps rolling. Wires coiled like snakes across the floor, all meeting at a tall chair where Garrett Shaw sat frozen, headset dangling, face pale. His hand drifted toward a keyboard. Nova exploded across the room, teeth bared. Shaw jerked back, tripped, and sprawled. Nova placed one heavy paw on his chest, growling deep. Shaw froze, arms high. "Hands where we can see them," Dorian ordered, voice iron flat. Cuffs clicked. Shaw's eyes darted around, but not at the officers. He watched Nova, as if the dog were the only creature in the room with real power. Outside, daylight sharpened. Sirens wailed closer. Backup had been called in. While detectives cataloged hard drives, Dorian searched for something else, a missing piece that tied Mitch to Shaw. But no recorder, no direct link appeared. After 2 hours, the evidence crew loaded boxes into vans. Nova still paced, uneasy. Dorian knelt. "What is it, girl? Did we miss something?" Back at Lana's house, Nova refused water and kept sniffing the hallway floor outside Ruby's bedroom. Ruby sat coloring, humming, save for the first time in days, yet Nova's restlessness spread through the house like a chill. At midnight, Nova pawed the floorboard under the closet. Dorian fetched a screwdriver, removed 2 planks, and found a small digital recorder wrapped in duct tape. "Ain't." He pressed play. Mitch's voice filled the room. Low threats, instructions, warnings to stay quiet. Ruby's small sobs followed. Dorian's hands shook. The date stamp proved the audio matched. The video Lena had pulled was the missing link. Morning light touched the kitchen window when Dorian slid the recorder across the table to Detective Ramos. "This nails him," Ramos said. "With Shaw already locked, Mitch will fold." True enough. Confronted with the audio, Mitch signed a plea that afternoon, naming Shaw's ring and the buyers who paid to watch. The chain of secrecy shattered. News spread fast. Neighbors brought casseroles. Children mailed drawings of Nova with capes. The local paper printed the headline, "Dog Saves Day, Breaks Web of Fear." Ruby cut the article out and taped it above her bed. She traced Nova's paw on colored paper, writing "My hero" beneath it. Nova seemed puzzled by the attention, wagging once, then returning to her watch beside the window. Healing, however, moved slower than headlines. Ruby still woke from dreams where walls whispered and toys blinked red. Lana joined her on the sofa. Some nights, guilt heavy in every sigh. Dorian set up counseling sessions. Some evenings, Ruby spoke only through Nova, whispering into the dog's fur while the therapist listened. Each whispered fear, once voiced, lost a little power. One Saturday, the town held a small gathering at the park. A wooden stage, folding chairs, lemonade in plastic cups. The mayor pinned a blue ribbon to Nova's vest. People clapped while birds sang overhead. Nova sneezed, shook her fur, and leaned into Ruby's side, as if saying awards were fine, but guarding Ruby mattered more. That night, Dorian grilled chicken on the porch. Ruby helped, wearing oven mitts too big for her hands. Lana set the table and smiled for the first time in weeks. Nova lay at the steps, eyes half closed, yet every so often her ears flicked toward the horizon. She was retired, yes, but retirement did not erase duty. Danger had knocked on their door. Now, she guarded the doorway of their new life. Before bed, Ruby slipped a note under Nova's collar. "Thank you for choosing me." Dorian read it later and felt a tightness in his throat. He looked out at the quiet yard where moonlight silvered. The grass. The farmhouse raid, the recorder, the arrest siege event felt huge, yet also small compared to the promise he made to Ruby the first night, keep her safe. Noma, ever faithful, had made that promise real. Down the hall, Ruby slept at last without flinching. Nova curled near her feet, tail tapping slow. Outside, a patrol car eased past. Lights off, a silent guardian in the street. Dorian whispered a final goodnight to the house, to the dog, to the child who had found her voice again. High above, stars glinted like distant cameras, but tonight, no hidden watcher held power here. Tonight, the only recording worth keeping was the steady rhythm of Ruby's breath and Nova's gentle snore. Proof that courage, once unlocked, can echo louder than any threat. The courthouse looked small against the heavy winter sky, its stone walls frosted with a thin coat of snow that softened every edge. Morning traffic hummed far away, but around the steps there was only cold breath and quiet nerves.
Dorian
Walked up slowly, each boot crunching ice. Ruby held Nova's leash, tiny mitten wrapped around the worn handle. Nova's paws left neat. Prints like musical notes on fresh paper, a steady beat guiding them forward. Inside, the courtroom was warm but tense, bright lights bouncing off polished wood. Rows of faces turned when Nova entered. Some eyes held pity, others respect, and a few carried the hard glitter of curiosity that follows news stories. Ruby sat beside Dorian on the front bench. Nova curled at her feet, head high, ears tuned to every shuffle and sigh. Detective Ramos nodded from across the aisle, folders stacked like bricks in front of him. Garrett Shaw sat at the defense table, hands cuffed, eyes dull. Mitch stared at the floor, shoulders hunched. A shell of bravado cracked open. The prosecution began with plain fact states, files, and the hidden camera, but every detail felt heavy, like stones laid on a scale. Lena Torres played the footage on a silent loop. Jurors leaned closer, absorbing the cold proof of a lens that never blinked. A hush fell each time the bracelet flashed in view, the tiny glare that tied Mitch to the crime. Shaw shifted in his chair, sweat glistening on his brow, as if the screens were heating the room one ugly memory at a time. When it was Ruby's turn, the courtroom seemed to lean in. She stood with her notebook clutched to her chest, Nova walking beside her. The judge smiled gently. "Take your time," she said. Ruby opened her notebook and read in a clear, small voice. "I used to whisper because I was scared. But Nova heard me, and she barked. Her bark turned my whisper into a song that everyone could hear. Each word floated up, soft but firm, weaving through the room and settling in every heart." Nova rested her chin on the rail, eyes following Ruby's finger as she traced her own sentence on the page.
Ow.
No one dared interrupt. Even Shaw looked away, undone by the simple power of a child's truth. Closing arguments felt brief after that. Moment, the jury left, and the clock seemed to stop. Dorian's hand found Ruby's. Nova's tail thumped once as if to remind them patience is easier when you trust the next note in the melody. In less than 2 hours, the jurors returned. Their verdict, guilty on all counts, rang out like a bell at dawn. Shaw slumped, Mitch wept, and Ruby exhaled as if releasing years of held breath. Outside, snowflakes drifted down, and Ruby reached out a mitten to catch one. "It's quiet," she whispered. Dorian knelt. "Quiet is yours now." Nova licked Ruby's cheek, sealing the promise. Weeks slid by, trading cold gray for the pale gold of early spring. In the town park, a small stage waited under fluttering. Banners, neighbors gathered with thermoses and smiles. The mayor stepped up, microphone squeaking. "Today we honor Nova, whose courage turned whispers into songs." He pinned a silver ribbon to Nova's faded vest. Cameras clicked, children cheered. Nova sneezed, shook her fur, and leaned into Ruby, more interested in the girl's laughter than any medal. Still, the crowd's clapping rose like applause. At the end of a concert, echoing against budding trees. Not long after, family court met in a quiet chamber. Lana sat beside her lawyer, eyes clear for the first time in months. Dorian spoke carefully, voice steady, explaining routines, therapy, sessions, and bedtime rituals guarded by Nova's watchful glare. The judge listened, then signed the papers. Dorian became Ruby's legal guardian, with Lana granted supervised visits. Outside, Lana hugged Ruby and whispered, "I'm learning, and I won't stop." Ruby nodded. Nova wagged, sensing the shifta. New chord struck between mother and child, fragile but true. Home changed, little by little. Ruby taped fresh drawings to the fridge, Nova with angel wings, Nova as a knight, Nova barking notes that floated like colorful balloons. Sometimes Ruby hummed softly while coloring, small melodies that wandered through the house. Dorian noticed. She no longer jumped at sudden sounds. Instead, she sang under her breath, testing freedom like a new instrument. Evenings found the three of them on the living room rug, building towers from wooden blocks. Each time one toppled, Ruby laughed instead of flinching, and Nova caught the rolling pieces with her nose, nudging them back like gentle percussion. One Saturday, dusk settled violet over the yard. Dorian lit 2 porch lanterns, their glow painting. Long, lazy shadows. Ruby sat on the swing, book in lap, legs dangling. Nova sprawled beside her, eyes half closed, ears flicking at crickets starting their night song. Ruby opened her book, hand-stitched pages of stories she had written since. The trial land began to read aloud. There once was a dog who heard a whisper so small it sounded like dust falling. She barked once, and the whisper grew louder. She barked twice, and it became a song. She barked a third time, and the song filled the sky with light. Her voice was steady and bright, each word clear. Dorian leaned on the rail, feeling the evening breeze carry Ruby's story into the dark. The melody of her words blended with the rustle of leaves and the low hum of a distant train. Nova's tail thumped. A slow rhythm, a soft drum matching Ruby's cadence. Somewhere across the yard, an old wind chime joined in, adding a faint, tinkling harmony. Ruby closed the book and looked up at the stars, blinking awake. "Do you think songs can chase bad dreams away?" she asked. Dorian smiled. "I think your song already did." Nova lifted her head, gaze following Ruby's finger as she drew, an invisible note in the air. The porch light reflected in the dog's eyes like twin moons, steady and calm. Night deepened, cool and gentle. Dorian carried a sleeping Ruby inside, tucking her beneath a quilt dotted with little golden suns. Nova circled once at the foot of the bed, then settled, breathing slow and even. Through the open window drifted the quiet chorus of frogs by the creek and the last notes of Ruby's story. Dorian stood a moment longer, listening. Outside, the sky stretched wide and dark, yet it felt less like a roof and more like an open stage waiting for the next song. Dorian closed the window softly. Nova's ears twitched but did not rise. She was content, guarding dreams now filled with music instead of fear. And in the hush after whispers, the house rested, wrapped in the simplest melody of all, a child's even breath, a dog's steady heart, and the promise that their song would play on, clear and brave, long after the night had passed.